John Bush here with the Sovereign BTC podcast. This is one of our final podcast updates for the Uncoinventional Living Tour, our family's trip out west using Bitcoin only. Today we're going to share with you an interview I did with Bob Podolsky. He's with the Titania Society. Check him out at titanians.org, titanians.org. He also wrote a book called Flourish. It's all about exploring non-hierarchical means of organizing society. And he likes to talk about this concept of what he calls an Octalog, which his research, along with the research of a gentleman by the name of John David Garcia, they found that groups are most effective, efficient, creative when they number 8, when there's 8 people, or 7 or 9, but anything after that it drops off. So he takes this concept and applies it to a framework, essentially, where you could actually create a peer-to-peer decentralized free society. We talk about that. We talk about ethics. We talk about how Bitcoin technology could be utilized in order to further these ideas. And it's a great interview, and I hold this man in high regard, and we're going to be exploring this concept, this philosophy of creating smaller groups. He helped to inspire me to put together my Freedom Cell talk, and that's one that you can hear on a previous podcast. So before we bring you that interview, I want to shout out a couple sponsors real quick. Green Revolution Cooling. Check them out at grcooling.com/Bitcoin. They do liquid submersion for your mining hardware, keep you competitive, dramatically reduce heating costs, dramatically reduce energy costs, and dramatically increase the number of machines you can fit in one space. Check them out at grcooling.com/Bitcoin. In the not-so-distant future, I'll be visiting their facility in Austin, Texas, and reporting on that and chatting with some people around there so we can learn more about this new technology in the Bitcoin space. Again, that's grcooling.com/Bitcoin. I also want to shout out Roberts & Roberts Brokerage Incorporated. Check them out at rrbi.co. Roberts & Roberts is led by Tim Fry, and also MK Lords works there. They're great Bitcoin supporters and Liberty supporters. Well, they got a special now for people that are using Bitcoin. If you buy with Bitcoin and if you use the coupon code Bitcoin, you'll get free shipping. They also recently lifted the $100 minimum buy for their precious metals to do a tribute to Bitcoin as a micro payment system. So if you want to buy some gifts for Christmas, perhaps some silver eagles, gold Krugerrands, or 90% silver, junk silver as they call it, that's not junk at all, check them out at rrbi.co. And again, if you purchase with Bitcoin and you use the coupon code Bitcoin, you'll get free shipping on your order. Still time to get some orders in before Christmas. Again, that's rrbi.co. Also, be on the lookout soon. I'm ordering something for my wife for Christmas. I'm buying a book from, hopefully she doesn't hear this to spoil it, but I'm doing it through Broker, BRAWKER.com, because the book I want to buy is on a website that doesn't accept Bitcoin. So Broker allows you to purchase things that don't accept from businesses that don't accept Bitcoin. Have someone else buy them. You send that person Bitcoin. It's a proxy facilitation service, and I'm exploring it, doing a podcast about it. So expect that one soon. And we'll also be talking with Cyril from Broker in the not so distant future. So again, that's grcooling.com/Bitcoin, Green Revolution Cooling, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. And check out the podcast coming out soon about Broker, BRAWKER.com. All right, without further ado, here's the interview we did with Bob Podolsky on Octalogs, freedom, ethics, all things that are good. We're here with Bob Podolsky. He's a thinker, author, activist, revolutionary, radical, and I've been looking into his work. Specifically, it interests me because it's similar to this concept that I've been kicking around: freedom cells, decentralized peer-to-peer, small groups working together for mutual benefit. And he's got this great concept, the Titania Project, these Octalogs. So we're going to pick his brain, learn what influenced him and how he got to this point, and then talk about the practicalities of establishing an alternative means of organizing society that's based not on hierarchies or coercion, but on mutually beneficial, voluntary, peer-to-peer association. So yeah, right up my alley. And
great.
Thanks for sitting down with us. How are
My
you today?
pleasure. My pleasure. I'm really delighted to be here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So maybe just start by sharing how these ideas came to resonate with you and how you got into this, and
Okay.
where you reached this point where now here you are agitating for the creation of this.
Agitating. That's a good descriptor.
Yeah.
I'm certainly agitated by some of the things going on around me. Well, I was a physicist for 10 years and didn't like the lifestyle, living in a cubicle And so I got retrained and became a psychotherapist. I had a private practice for 25 years, and I really loved the work because every day I got to see people's lives improve as a result of what I was doing. And then in 1984, I met John David Garcia. And he was a businessman who had become very, very successful, had a $100 million business that he walked away from because he realized all he's doing is making money. And instead, he wanted to leave a legacy that would change the world in a positive way. He wanted to have a real effect on the world. And so he moved from San Francisco to Elkton, Oregon, and began offering workshops on creativity. And I saw one of the ads for a workshop, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I went to attend one of his workshops. And I was so moved by what he was doing that he and I got to be friends and continued to collaborate for the next 17 years until he died. And in 1985, I began writing articles about ethics and law and government, and how they relate to each other, and how, the pluses and minuses of what I observed. So I applied the scientific method and a variety of systems analysis tools and sought to answer the question, what has to happen for humanity to thrive, to really flourish, to do well, to fulfill its potential? And John David's concepts resonated with me because he really put his finger on where the problems were. And the way we agreed after a while to describe the problem is that the major institutions that most people look at to solve societal problems, these institutions create the problems. Big businesses, particularly banks, organized religions, and government create the problems. Well, that's B for banks, OR for organized religion, G for government. I call this group the Borg.
The Borg.
The Borg, yes. Yeah, well, Trekkies, Star Trek fans like the word, and I see the Borg as parasitic and having many of the dynamics of the Star Trek Borg. So it's a very apt label for that group of people. And the trick is then to create institutions that consistently make ethical decisions as opposed to these institutions that I just named that consistently make unethical decisions. So through John David Garcia, I started to study ethics and to take it seriously, because I had always thought it was a trivial subject prior to that, even though I had, been subjected to a school semester of it in a philosophy class. The professor clearly wanted to fill the term with something, and so he put a lot of stuff in that course, not relevant, not helpful, not something I could act on. Things about the history of ethics and the great philosophers and what they had to say. And to me, that...
Beauty?
What?
What is beauty?
What is beauty, yeah. So the upshot of all of that was that I came away not having a lot of respect for ethics until I met John David. Now, I'm able to teach in less than a day all of the basic ideas of ethics that one needs in order to apply it day to day, moment to moment, in making our personal decisions about what we do and what we don't do. Out of that came some research on creativity, because everything we really love in life derives from some form of creativity. And based on that, we wanted to maximize creativity, particularly in groups. So we experimented with different size groups, 2 people, 3 people, up to 20. And we found that we were able to measure creativity pretty well. And we found that the optimal number for doing creative stuff together was 8 people. John David liked to call these octets, but by the time I got finished augmenting the technology, I was calling it octalogs. Like a dialogue, but it's a conversation, a special kind of conversation among 8 people That's optimal. 7 and 9 is almost as good. Below 7 and above 9, creativity drops off pretty steeply. But one can still use the principles, oftentimes, to pull together a group that is better optimized. And so the principles all come from the ethics. And so I teach ethics, and in the brief time we have for this interview, I don't have time to go into the details, but I'll give you the summation, which is that an ethical act is any act which increases creativity or love or objective truth or awareness, any of these resources. Okay, there are actually 5 of them: love, creativity, objective truth, personal evolution is the other one that I hadn't mentioned. And when you increase any one of these, they all increase. And if you diminish or limit any of them, they're all limited or diminished. So they're logically equivalent. So any act that increases one of them, or all of them, that increases them for at least one person, including the person acting, without limiting or diminishing any of these resources for anyone, is an ethical act. Okay? So if 1 million people benefit by what I do, and one person is harmed or diminished, I've done something unethical.
The ends don't justify the means.
Exactly. In fact, it turns out that ethical means are always ethical ends in themselves. And this is one of the principles that comes out of that definition by sheer logic. There's a whole set of principles. There's about a dozen of them that are really crucial. This is part of what I teach, part of what's in my book. My book is called Flourish, An Alternative to Government and Other Hierarchies. And my website is titanians.org, Titanians, titanians.org, where you'll find a whole lot of articles and information about how to have ethical societies and how to organize for any ethical project. So you get a group of people together, and it's typically somewhere between 7 and 9 people, maybe 10. You form an octalog, you start doing stuff, and then you need more people. So you form another octalog, independent of, but willing to contract with the first one. And so when you have an octalog, there's some basic ideas that the people in the octalog adhere to. All decisions, for example, are unanimous. If it isn't unanimous, it's not a group decision. We give each other feedback. Okay, we don't want to become bureaucratic, and bureaucracy is the systematic elimination, destruction, or avoidance of corrective feedback. That is the nature of bureaucracy. We don't want that to happen within an octalog, and so we have agreed to honestly and openly and caringly give each other feedback about how we experience one another and what our opinions are and feelings are and thoughts are about anything else that goes on. So we can organize an octalog for any ethical purpose. It can be a business, a charity, a school, you name it. If it's ethical, we can do that. We can create a group. And if we need more than 8 people to accomplish the purpose of the group, which has to, by the way, be an ethical purpose, or we don't have an octalog. So based on that, if we don't have, if we need more people than 8, we form a second octalog and make a contract between the two. So we have a contract within the octalog, and then a contract beyond that to form what I call a holomat, which is a group of octalogs that, there's a group of octalogs that work together for a common purpose. Now I want to introduce a friend of mine who is here and has something to say about what we're doing. And her name is Laura Harrison. She's been a great inspiration to me and a very creative individual. And Laura, what's been your sense of all of this that we're doing?
In the last class, when you asked us what kind of octalog we wanted to start, and we had different answers. Mm-hmm. Well, one I didn't share was find other people to sell stuff on eBay with. Mm. I mean, it's not going to save the world as such, but could help people.
About a business.
Yeah, at least for a while.
Okay. Well, octalogs are great for business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. In fact, today and yesterday, we had a fellow in the class that I'm doing. This fellow who's in the class I'm doing owns a business. And he's really concerned about, is he ever going to be able to retire? Well, in order to retire, you've got to either sell the business or you've got to have an ongoing income from the business. And it has to be able to function without you. Well, so many business owners are indispensable. They make themselves indispensable to their business. They are the business. And then they can't sell it because the potential buyer goes, wait a minute, where are you in this? You're going to retire? What happened to the business? So we have a strategy for business people to deal with that situation head on. We actually can show a business owner how to reorganize the business so it runs itself and grows. It becomes more and more creative, more and more successful, generates more and more income, and so the person who started the business doesn't have to be there all the time. In fact, may not need to be there at all. I love it. Business ownership, if you own enough shares of GE, you don't have to go to a GE shop and punch a clock. You can live on the dividends from your portion of the ownership. And for businesses who adopt these techniques of making holomats of octalogs, it's possible for them to retire with an income from the business they created. And imagine you go on a trip around the world, you come back, your business has grown instead of diminished.
It's autonomous.
Yes.
Can you talk about some of the rationales behind why octalogs may be more beneficial towards achieving the goal of a more ethical society? What are the qualities of an octalog that make it different from other means of organization?
I love the question. I love that question because it's central. It's absolutely central to what I'm attempting to make happen. Let's compare an octalog with a hierarchy, or for that matter, a holomat with a hierarchy. And imagine that you are in the middle of a hierarchy, because there's very few people, usually one person at the top, many at the bottom of a hierarchy, but most people are somewhere in the middle. So if you're in the middle, you've got a boss. And the boss tells you what to do, where to do it, when to do it, how to do it, what to wear while you're doing it, whether you can take a potty break. And by controlling your income, controls such things as what kind of house you live in, what kind of car you drive, what kind of schools your kids go to, what kind of vacations you take. You like that? What do you get out of participating in that kind of organization? Well, the only thing I can see that people get out of it is they get to be someone else's boss. Oh boy. And if you're a control freak, a psychopath or a sociopath, that feels really good. But for most of us, it's a drag. Okay? Now let's compare that with your experience being in an octalog that's part of a holomat. Okay, you wake up in the morning and instead of going, oh no, I've got to go to work, you wake up and say, wow, I get to go to work. You feel enthused, you feel excited about what you're doing. You have passion about what you're doing because you are one of the key players in the business. You have an equal say with everyone else in the organization. And you can be creative. In fact, one of the purposes of an octalog is to increase creativity. And that means in each individual and in the group. And we have group processes that contribute to that in a really big way. We have a thing, for example, called amplification. It's a group process that amplifies creativity in a group such that the creativity of the group as a whole becomes much greater than the sum of the creativities of the individuals. It's a very synergistic process. It doesn't take long to learn how to do it. And the core idea in the octalog is the ethics. That's what makes it all work. So there you are, and you have the choice of showing up for work in your hierarchy, or with the same set of skills and a few additions, you can go to work in an octalog, because octalogs make really good businesses. So you go to work in your octalog and you're dealing with 7 or 8 other people, and over a very short period of time you get to be good friends with them, and over a little bit longer period of time you get to really trust them. These are people you can confide in. They'll give you feedback. They'll give you feedback in a caring way. You may not like to hear what the feedback is. I can remember many times in my life when I didn't want to hear the feedback that I needed to hear. You know, we all go through that to some degree. But my point is that you go to work and have fun. Being creative feels like play. No matter how hard, no matter how many hours a day, how many hours a week you put into something that's creative, it feels like play. And so in that setting, you can accomplish a great deal more than you can in other settings. You become more effective, more efficient, and way more creative. And you have a lot more fun among these friends of yours. Which position would you rather be in? Would you rather be in the hierarchy with a boss? Or would you rather be in an octalog with a bunch of friends? Okay? Well, you know who's going to win that race, hands down, once people realize it's an alternative. And my job, what I've taken on as my, not only my job, but my weird, that is my destiny of choice, is to let the world know about this technology and teach people to teach the technology. Okay, so I'm teaching the technology now, but very shortly I will be teaching teachers of the technology. And once that gets going, it'll be no stopping it, because it's basically an idea. You can't stop an idea.
Just like Bitcoin.
Exactly. I see Bitcoin as a wonderful, wonderful resource, because it allows us, we humans, for the first time in 8,000 years, we can have a free market. And there's nothing going to beat a free market when it comes to providing prosperity in our day-to-day lives on this planet.
Balanced free market.
Yeah, and there's many parallels between the Bitcoin network and technology and this concept of a peer-to-peer, non-hierarchical means of organization. It's basically the same thing in effect. And there's even these Bitcoin 2.0 applications and distributed autonomous companies whereby you create the program that essentially could provide the economic and communicative infrastructure for an Octalog or a holomat.
Exactly.
Those are some of the ideas that I've been kicking around, how we can take this Octalog concept, this decentralized peer-to-peer group, and apply a framework to be able to more efficiently collaborate through communication, through value sharing and economic exchange. And so the overlap is
tremendous.
There.
Tremendous overlap.
What do you see as some other technologies that could apply to this, or do you think, how important do you think it is to get people one-on-one in this human connection? Like, should an octalog be in the same geographic vicinity of one another? Does it work if they're spread out throughout the country or throughout the world? Or what are some of the things that go into considering that? Okay,
that's a great question. I love it. And it's a question that I've spent a lot of time thinking about and working on. Octalogs as we know them today, if you include in the octalog technology the amplification process, this group process that amplifies creativity, if that's part of an octalog, as of now, the octalog has to be able to meet face-to-face. Now, in the future, after some research has been done, which I can define but haven't done it yet, after some research has been done, we can do that creativity amplification over the internet. But we need to have a biofeedback mechanism that makes it possible. That hasn't yet been invented, but we know it can be. The technology to create that actually exists already. We just have to research how to configure it. So the amplification, if you don't have amplification processes, then you could do the whole thing over Skype. Once we have the technological means to provide the right kind of biofeedback to one another in the group, then we can do octalogs distributed with people all over the planet and all part of the same octalog. Right now, we don't have the means to do that, but it's part of my plan, my intention to see that come into existence.
What exactly do you mean by biofeedback? What is that?
Okay. Well, in the process that amplifies creativity, the group typically is sitting in a tight circle, often either holding hands or with their hands over one another's shoulders, their arms over each other's shoulders, breathing in time with each other, and sharing a fantasy. It's kind of a shared meditation, if you will. And that process, with a few suggestions thrown in on the part of the person sort of leading the meeting, has huge, huge creativity consequences that are wonderful and exciting. Right now we can do that when the group's all sitting in the same room. We can't do it over the internet yet. Okay. But I'm not sure. Am I answering your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is something that I really want to see that happen, and have yet to have the resources to do the research. I can define the research. I can share, what has to be accomplished and how to go about it. But the biofeedback is just, when we're sitting in a circle in a room holding hands, we're communicating in a lot more ways than verbally. A lot of nonverbal communication, and there is.
Very experiential.
It's very experiential, totally experiential. And the process relies upon the nonverbal communication. So if we didn't have the nonverbal communication, the process wouldn't really work. So how do you do nonverbal communication over an internet, for example, or via Skype or some such thing? Well, one way is you have a sensor on your body that picks up changes in your temperature, your heartbeat, the shape of your heartbeat pulse, your respiration, the galvanic skin response. There are many, many things you can measure, and we need to find out which of those are crucial to the amplification process and allow that feedback go from person to person via something like Skype.
I think they already have the machine for it. If you get a prescription and sit in the arm, blood pressure, it does all sorts of different readings.
Sure.
And you're just sitting there.
Right.
So,
The technology for doing the measuring exists.
Yeah.
We just
Just gotta
don't know yet
get them
which
together.
measurements are crucial.
Sure.
But we can find it out.
Sure, just takes time. Okay, a final question. If you could just impart some wisdom. One of the things that we've struggled with in Central Texas with our little small group that we've been working with for the past few years, that's now, I don't know, I guess you could say disbanded.
Wow.
Yeah, to the point of non-communication with some of the members. There was interpersonal conflict. It wasn't even I guess there was difficulty reaching consensus. There's personality differences, and it wasn't necessarily a totally consensus-based or... I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, sometimes when you try to create a leaderless environment, there still tends to be leaders and people that follow, or at least aren't up front with the driving of what's taking place, and that can breed resentment, and everyone has insecurities that goes into play. So
Okay. Let me respond.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is something that I see as absolutely crucial to developing the future of humanity that seems desirable to me. I want to mention that my long range goal, if I were to live that long, and I doubt I will, but I would like to see humanity evolve into an ethical network intelligence. And intelligence has certain properties. You've got a black box sitting on your table, you want to know, is it intelligent or not? And there's a whole list of and I can't go into it in this short time, but there's this whole list of properties that black box can be tested to find out if it's an entity or if it's just a thing. And I see humanity evolving. I see the potential for it to evolve in such a way that all of the people in a giant holomat constitute an entity, an intelligence that has the properties that go along with being an intelligent entity. And I see that as a form of network. And I believe that a network could be good or bad, but if it's ethical, it has the power to transform human experience in ways we can't even begin to imagine, but which we can count on them being positive, good things. the potential of the human spirit, so to speak, is way bigger than most people realize. I see it. I've seen it for a long time. I have friends and peers who see it. Most people never see it. I want to show it to them. I want everyone on the planet eventually to realize they can have a good life. Okay? It won't be like what we call the good life today, but it'll be good in terms of people being plugged in with each other and bonding with each other. Interconnected. And I've been very frustrated around when I was a psychotherapist that I could only help so many people a week, and I want to be helping thousands or millions, and here I was stuck with, a couple dozen people at the most at any given time. So I have brought to this technology, this Titania project technology, another concept that it goes beyond the organizational development of the Octalog, and that is something I call soul bonding. And the reason I want to do the soul bonding, and I've begun doing this, is because violence among people on the planet has an origin. A lot of people just think, oh, well, we grow up and we're violent things. No. Well, or we're not, but others are.
Yeah, sad.
So the question is, well, where does all this violence come from? Well, abuse and neglect in childhood is the source of violence. If we were raising children without any violence, where we're not spanking them, we're not hitting them, we're not verbally abusing them, if we can do that, they're not going to grow up believing that violence is okay. So they will never initiate violence on anyone. They'll never be the first to pull the trigger. They'll never sign up for a military that wants to send them overseas and kill people that they've never met and who pose no threat to them. Yeah. That will simply stop, along with all the other violence that we see around us, especially violence that we see as a result of criminalizing things that don't have any victims. Victimless crime should not be criminalized. It's unethical.
We need a whole amount of people that can go to the courthouse and just surround the person, and the government's like, oh, we got thrown out. See you later.
Yeah.
Many of you, and you're not violent.
Right.
Yeah, it's been normalized, not only violence in general, but the initiation of violence.
Yes.
And I think that takes away people's fight or flight instinct, where humans should have a vitriolic reaction when they see someone being hurt or abused. But instead, since we've been desensitized from early age with culture, with parents hitting kids,
right,
kids watching people hit each other, beat each other to death on television,
right,
it's totally desensitized. So when they see it in real life, when they should go into fight or flight mode and try to protect the innocence that's being harmed or try to get them the hell out of there, they just sit there and watch or pull out their smartphone.
It's entertainment.
Yeah.
And that is a huge distortion of the ethics. It's very highly unethical.
But do it.
Oh yeah, a lot of unethical things happen. And in chapter 4 of my book, Flourish, there's a detailed explanation of the relationship between ethics, law, and government. And you can't read chapter 4 and not realize that our society is doing a lot of very damaging things to us. At least some of the society is. And we don't have to do that. We can transform society. And all of the considerations that are the key considerations to make that change happen are in the book, condensed in chapter 4 and expanded on in other chapters. So I want to urge people, get hold of Flourish, go to titanians.org website, order yourself a copy of Flourish. You can order it either in paperback or you can order it in Kindle format. And just read it, and just say, oh, well, maybe this is something worth doing. Maybe this is something worth supporting. Because the fact is, this is new. But it's not so new that it's untried or untested or unproven. We're talking about proven technology that most of us have been looking for all our lives. And here's our chance to actually find it, use it, put it to work. We can stop looking. We can stop seeking. We can be finders instead of seekers. That's what I want to see people do.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a good stopping point. We could go on for hours and hours, if not days.
I've done that, yes.
We'll definitely continue the conversation, Bob. Thanks for chatting with us about this exciting idea.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot, John.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Bob Podolsky. Hope you enjoyed the interview. Again, you can check out his work at titanians.org, and I invite you to listen to one of our previous podcasts there about freedom cells, which is my iteration of this similar concept. We're going to be working together to further this idea, and I'm really excited about utilizing blockchain technology in order to communicate and share value amongst the tribe, amongst the Octalog, which brings us to our magic word. The magic word for today's podcast is Octalog. It's Octologue. Octalog. It's like octo is in 8 and log is in communication, I guess, like dialogue, which is with 2 people. But Octalog is with 8 people. So the magic word for today is Octalog. Octologue. Peace, freedom, Bitcoin. Check us out at uncoinventional.com. And I'm out.